Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight for our January 2024 community meeting for Measure G. So we'll get started with introductions here. My name is Julio Arroyo, Director of Maintenance Operations and Safety for the school district. We have Superintendent Kaufman here.
Good evening, everyone.
Andrina Hitchcock, AECOM.
Laura Noss, architect, Lionakis.
Jewel, architect with Lionakis. And Brett Mitchell with AECOM.
Thank you. So the purpose of these Measure G forums that we're having tonight are to be able to get feedback. Typically in a school board meeting, it's hard to have that conversation and back and forth interaction. So this gives us the opportunity to share the information we shared at the previous board meeting, but then be able to have that conversation and dialogue with the public and pick up any feedback or questions. And so what I'll do now before I get started, we'll have Into Action, who are our moderators for tonight and our community partners. They do already a microphone to kind of go over the ground rules, just how we're going to field questions and go over the structure of the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Julio. So first and foremost, thanks everyone who comes in person, and thank you to the people online. We have our usual meeting norms. Oh, thank you so much. Our usual meeting norms, which I'll go over in a second, but also there's regular communications between meetings. And if you're not signed up for those communications, please sign up. If you're new to the room, there are sheets over there on the bookshelf. So I'll say sign up. Keep coming back. We do have regular meeting norms, are the same as usual. First and foremost, keep students and learning at the center. Speak to each other with kindness and respect. Listen to each other with compassion and curiosity, and be part of the solution. So as Julio said, we really enjoy these forums, and we've been using to date, I guess for the past 3 or more, a program called Slido. And Slido helps us be equitable with not only the folks online, but the folks in the room. And our Slido, it's Slido, SLIDO.com. And our meeting number is 4111 4111. So if you go to slido.com and enter the meeting number 4111, you can put in your questions and we will answer, and we will repeat, and they will be answered in the order in which received. If you do not want to use Slido and you're in the room, you can write them on those pieces of paper over on the bookcase, and we will enter them in and read them out as well. So those again help us to be equitable to the folks online and the folks in the room, and keep it moving. Even though we don't have as many folks in the room and online, it really does help. So yeah, thank you in advance for using Slido, and our esteemed panelists were welcome as many questions and comments as possible. And thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to pass it here to Elizabeth Kaufman, our superintendent, to give an introduction for the meeting.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Working. Sounds like it's working. First of all, I just want to again thank everyone for coming. This is sort of our wrap-up meeting for the conceptual design phase. We'll be asking the board to provide some approval of conceptual design at its February meeting. And then we will be continuing on scheduling additional meetings a little bit more in sync with the timeline for the actual work. So we'll be moving from kind of soft cost and planning work to actual implementation and construction, and we'll be resyncing our meeting timelines with those so we can provide opportunities for feedback and input along the way. I do want to say that we've had the opportunity today to interview a number of folks who would be joining us as members potentially of our Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, and it was really instructive for us to have the opportunity to listen to members of our community who are interested in this work And a common theme in those interviews was communication and areas where we as a team could potentially do better communication. What we've tried to structure our very best in our initial planning phases, but what we have come to realize is one of the things we do is we make sure that whatever we present to the community, we've already passed by the board. We, sort of have a no surprises norm with the board, and we don't ever as a team want to get out ahead of the guidance of the board. And I think what that feels like for a number of community members, particularly people who are concerned about the safety of our fields and the development, is that we are potentially using delay tactics or saying, like, wait for the information. We'll let you know it's going to be safe. Just trust us. And, we want to make sure that people understand, first of all, that, our children attend our schools, that, we have the responsibility for the safety of all children and take that seriously, but also that if there are questions that we're not answering in these forums or in board meetings, please come forward, ask them, because we don't know where our disconnects are. One of the things we talked about today was potentially doing like a roadshow and coming around to individual school sites so parent committees or communities could reach out to us that way rather than in a large forum. But please let us know, because obviously I think our collective goal is to make safe, warm, and dry schools for educating your children. And we don't want anybody to be concerned or feel like our process is, a rubber stamp. So I want to make sure everybody has that information and extend that invitation. So I will hand it back to Julio.
Thank you. And to get started tonight, the topics we'll be discussing is our environmental services update. So just give an overview of where we're at in the process for the environmental studies that will need to take place on campus, which state organizations will be working with, and what that process will entail, and the information along that point, as well as to give an update on our steering committee. We formed a steering committee for our middle school project with staff members and administrators to be able to collectively get feedback and information to put together the programmatic needs as we develop the new middle school, as well as give an overview on the student outreach, the meetings we've had with students and the feedback that we received, and then well as put forward our preliminary cost estimates. And then we have some information at the end of the presentation. This presentation is available online, but that presentation is information that we bring to the board every month, whether it's our schedule, information of what's upcoming in the school board meetings. And so that is for informational only. So you'll have the opportunity to go online to be able to review that information, but that's also going to be something that we present every month. So I'll hand it off here to Sandrine with AECOM, our program manager, and she'll start with the environmental services update.
Absolutely. Thank you. So as you know, it was in November, I believe, we onboarded an environmental service firm who essentially, and their name is Nino and Moore. They are a fairly large company that's been doing this type of services for a very, very long time. You can go over the next slide, please. But essentially, we just wanted to give you a little background about who they are. They do a lot of work with school districts. They've worked on a lot of school projects, but also they deal a lot with landfill questions where there are problems, not just landfill, but also every type of contamination you can think about. So we just want to let you know that the firm we hired has great experience in doing this work. Next, please. And so two people from the team was there last time at the board meeting, introducing the firm and what they do. But essentially, the team is has people who are greatly experienced and very specialized in this type of work and analysis. So just wanted to introduce them last time. So the work they've been doing is essentially reviewing all the data, all the information that is available about the site, not just the school site, but also the community center. And all that information is actually public information. You can find it online on the DTSC website. So they've reviewed all the information. And their preliminary findings is that, yes, there is contamination, there is heavy metal. We know that that there is a 2-3 foot soil cap because of the landfill, and that's one approach to encapsulate essentially what was there. But also they know that we need to do more testing and more sampling to get a full picture of what's there. Their initial finding is that there is nothing unusual that would prevent the district from developing or redeveloping the site. Next, please. So the next phase is going to be for them. Essentially, we're starting a process with DTSC. DTSC is the Department of Toxic Substances Control. And they're essentially going to lead the whole process. And the school district is in the process of entering an agreement with them so we can work with them on the next steps. Typically, we would do what is called a phase 1, but we're going to skip that step because we already know we have something on site. So there's enough information to say, okay, we can skip that step, go to step 2, which is essentially what we call PEA, which is Preliminary Endangerment Assessment. Essentially, it's a phase where we're going to scope what needs to be done. We need to look at the information we have, where the gaps are, and all agree that, yes, we need to do X, Y, and Z to all be on the same page and understand what we'll need to do next. So that's our next step, essentially laying out this plan. And then after that, the next steps will be essentially implementing the plan. So it's going to be, it takes time to go through those steps. And it's all public. There are public comment periods that are usually between 30 and 60 days. So there is opportunity for anyone to review that information and provide comments. The whole process typically will take between 10 and 12 months. So by the end of the year, we will have the complete report and mitigation plan for the site.
So we wanted to give you an update of the steering committee. We do have a steering committee of board members and faculty members, community members, and that group has met twice so far and will meet a third time next week. And the third meeting will be the final one of this conceptual design phase, and then we will regroup with that same group of folks as we move through the design process. The first 2 meetings, we explored some options. We talked about sustainability. Yesterday, a number of us went on some tours of new schools to show some of the concepts and get the steering committee's reaction. And next week, we're going to bring back some of the final options for the steering committee to rank. And we should note the steering committee is advisory. And so we will take the advice of the steering committee to the board with those options for them to ultimately make the final decision. So many of you who have been involved in this from the beginning understand that where we currently are is building the school on this existing site and building an interim campus adjacent to the property while this building is being taken down and replaced. And so on the left, you see the interim campus I'll go point to it even though the folks at home. You see the interim campus that would be developed over on this end while the new construction is being built here, maintaining the existing multipurpose and the buildings that surround that. And then we started to investigate some different concepts of collaboration spaces, grade level pod organization, planning for a future gymnasium, as well as keeping all of those balls in the air while we had the interim campus on site. And just starting to get some 3D massing and understanding of what that could be. I will tell you that we are in option development. This was conceptual to do some exploration with the committee. Next week, they'll be seeing more and further developed options. And then we started to talk about things like collaboration spaces, what that looked like, how the classrooms would open onto those spaces, what they might be used for, how those grade level pods can work, and what value they bring to the teaching environment. They are looking in those grade level configurations of multidisciplined wings so that all of the sixth grade classrooms, and by all I mean most, would be contained in that wing, and that would allow that multidisciplined approach to teaching and learning. And similarly, we saw some concepts about gathering stairs, amphitheater stairs, things like this that would allow the school to come together and the community to come together for performance and other things like that. We do have to balance the program against the budget that we have. And so we've identified, and the bond identified, the base program as replacement of the things in this building, and including library administration, of course, classroom collaboration spaces, and all of the ancillary support spaces. What we wanted to make sure to include in the master plan, though, is so that we could budget for it and understand what those numbers were, are a future gymnasium and stage area, potentially food service. We needed to understand where the district office was going to be relocated, and amenities like air conditioning and other things. So the big red line is a little bit of what's in the base program on the left and what's in the augmentation program on the right, basically removing the gym and supporting spaces for a future phase. So what we heard from the steering committee at our meetings was a preference for some campus style versus a single building. And what that meant is they just wanted a little more outdoor time for students in between classes or moving on the campus. I mentioned the grade level pod concept that was explored with them. And then a little bit of understanding of the integration of special education, how physical education was going to be supported without a new gym, and certainly whether or how a food service program would be introduced on campus. We did student outreach, which was really great. We had 2 focus groups plus some lunchtime drop-ins, and a lot of the things that they looked at were hallways and stair congestion. They wanted to make sure our restrooms and access to the building was inclusive. The branding piece, they wanted a little more school color, a little more excitement in the interior space, and specifically about mascots and school colors. They wanted it to be fair outside where the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade playgrounds were, and they had some strong ideas about who had more. And then, of course, the students wanted lockers. The backpacks are heavy. They have after-school activities. We also looked at images in sort of a design preference way to prompt the conversations both at the steering committee and with the students. And with some dots, they were able to choose the things that they liked best. It's going to be you, Sandrine.
So again, just want to reiterate that this is really a progress update, right? We're still in a process meeting with the steering committee and other from the district and the community. But essentially, that's kind of like a snapshot in time of, based on this program, this is what we can tell you about the costs. So obviously at this level, this is very conceptual. We don't have much detail. We're really looking at like rough order of magnitude cost per square foot, right? For the site, for the building. So there's a lot of things that are gonna come into play later that will be more detailed, that will provide a better idea of what the cost is. So again, this is rough order of magnitude at this point in time based on the feedback we got. So based on what Laura presented, the program, all the feedback we received so far, our contractor partner, Flint, thinks that based on that program, the cost would be $145 million. That includes not just the building and the site work, but also the potential soil mitigation we might have to do, depending on what that additional sampling and mitigation measure might be. And might be we don't have to spend the money. We're just holding the money just in case. And obviously the interim housing, because we have to spend $15 million to have this temporary building for 2 years while we build the building. That being said, again, this snapshot in time based on program, we know our max budget is 130 million. So including state funding. So what we looked at is essentially options to get there. Options include reducing the square footage of the building. Do you want to add to what are the options?
Yes, so we're reducing the square footage of the building, looking to try and renovate the existing multipurpose and expand that for some of the arts programs. And then we'll show you an option that does that in just a minute, but those light renovations allow that multipurpose without the gym in the short term to maintain, right? So that's a goal of ours.
Thank you. Next. So essentially what Laura was talking about, looking at how can we get to 130 million, it changes a little bit how the concept plans would look like, right? And we're still working on, like Laura mentioned, on other options, other things we can bring in or take out. But at this point, we're essentially looking at reducing essentially what the program is. So as I mentioned, we are looking at 130. One question, the main question to the board last week was, are we accounting for the additional state funding we might get? And that's dependent on the November bond measure and also capturing the dollars we're eligible for right now. And the direction was, yes, account for it. So we are currently moving forward to looking at options within that $130 million. Which is this. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the information we have to present tonight. We'd like to open up for questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So again, if you just joined us, we are using slido.com, slido.com, meeting number 4111. And we have a lot of great questions and comments in the queue. Feel free to put yours in there. We'll respond to them in order of receipt. The very first one, slido.com 4111. The first one is great one, overarching question. When is construction going to start? And what will be the impact on our children? Can you put our mind at ease that this will not cause learning challenges?
I can start and then Sandrine can add on to it. So our current schedule is to start in um January of 2025 at least to start the finalizing of the planning, but really our would be for next summer 2025 would be finalizing, so we would have students in campus in the interim campus of that fall. And so really that's what our going into this process is that's our number one thing is safety for the students, safety for the staff, making sure that every step we take is with that in mind. And so it's really important as we're going through the environmental process of statutorily is working with the state is that's our number one goal is how do we minimize the disruption? How do we minimize any, I mean, we're not going to move forward if there's any environmental issues. It's a really tight statutory. We have to work with the state, and we're not going to be able to move forward without agreement with the state and the governing bodies that look over this work to make sure that things are safe for the students and staff. And so that's outside of what the state process is. That's our commitment in terms of the district and something that we hold true every day, whether it's our maintenance and repairs or whether it's this project at this level as well.
And was the question asking about the middle school schedule?
Yeah, it was just asking about the impact on children and helping us all to be more at ease that this isn't going to cause learning challenges and the date of the construction and when it's going to start.
So as far as the learning disruption, I think, you know, school districts all over the world go through construction projects while children are in school. And I think for us as a district, we've made some important decisions like keeping our students together as a middle school, like working together with our staff to make sure that we have the housing set up for students to return to school in a timely manner and not have that disruption, not building portables while they're in school, but really having a place for them to enter and become a community again as we begin the next phase of the journey. So build the interim housing, have the classrooms ready for children, have the staff ready to teach the children, and then pivot and focus on the actual construction. So the plan is really to minimize disruptions by creating a place for children to go to school in interim housing while we do the construction. Obviously, there will be noise factors. You know, that's part of construction. I know the Flint team is mindful of that. They're mindful of looking at opportunities to flex their schedule so that they can mitigate noise and impact for children. However, it's a construction project, and I'd be remiss if I overpromised. But having been through a number of projects myself, the kids tend to be engaged and interested in the work. It's a somewhat nice distraction to the way we do things generally every day on school. So they're tend to be very curious, and I know the contractors are very interested in opportunities for engaging and supporting children in some of the learning.
Fine. Do you want me to do one more? Sure. Yeah. Okay, the next one, similarly in terms of thinking of putting children at the forefront and health and safety, is around proof. Can you provide any proof that digging up ground that used to be a dumping facility is not going to cause any health risks for our children?
Similar to the process that Sandrine reviewed in the first couple of slides, that's the process that we're going to be going through with the state in terms of going through with the Department of Toxicity. That's the process we're going to be reviewing. And so there's going to be processes of what the findings are going to be as we, there'll be sampling that'll be happening on site. And so those are the things that there'll be review periods where the information will become public. That's one of the things we are going to make sure that that's a very transparent process, putting that information on our website, communicating that out so folks know where we're at in that process when there's those review periods. But Sandrine, do you want to add on to that?
Yes, absolutely. And the fact that we're going to be transparent about it, we don't have a choice. The state mandates that it be a public process. So every information that, we currently have is available to the public, and every information we're going to gather on top of that is going to be available to the public. So again, it is a transparent process because it is required to be. Also, I just want to mention that this is part of CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act process. This environmental study is a small part of it. And we're going to look at a lot of other different things, right? We're going to look at traffic, impact on traffic. We're going to look at noise. We're going to, what else? I'm missing water.
Biological pieces,
historic.
biological pieces.
So this is, again, we hear you. This is a big concern. This is an old landfill, and we are required to look into it regardless. But there are a lot of other things that are impacting the site and the occupants of the site that we're also going to look into. So again, this is something that's going to be public and transparent.
And I think just to kind of piggyback on in our board meeting, Nino and Moore, when they were discussing the work they're going to do, they hold themselves, or the state is holding them to a residential standard. So when they're looking at the safety elements and approving projects based on what the DTSC and the preliminary endangerment assessment have determined, that is the same level of standard as would be applied for residential construction. So I think that's, to me, from a superintendent, also legally a parent of your child when they leave your door and come to school, having done the historical review of the documents myself, please, I encourage everyone to look at the summary on the website. Then having Nino and Moore come forward and concurring with the analysis in terms of the level of risk of landfill substances that are indeed, in fact, part of this landfill as opposed to other potentially risky landfills. And then knowing that, we won't do anything until we have those findings, right? So we're not going to break ground surreptitiously and decide to go ahead of the state process. No, the reason why we're engaging these individuals is to make sure that we're creating schools where children are safe, warm, and dry. And that again, that standard is a very high standard for schools. So it is not a capricious standard where any of us could override that in the interest of creating a school. It is a standard that we must be accountable to, we must be public about. And, if there are concerns, we're going to get stopped. There's no way for any of us, if we were disingenuous people, which I don't believe we are, but I also know public trust when it's your own kid is a whole different story, that, we aren't going to be allowed to construct in ways that are dangerous for children. So we would never want to either. But I just, again, we're very mindful of your concerns.
So next up, we have a comment, and forgive me if I'm butchering your name, from Olesia Tribuquet. And she says, environmentally sound approach should guide the district board while considering options for the middle school location alternatives, EPA/CEQA compliance. And then she asks, what environmental documents have been prepared so far for the current location of the middle school, and have there been openly shared with the public?
Sorry, I missed the last part of the question, but
no problem.
Okay.
What environmental documents have been prepared so far for the current location of the middle school, and have they been openly shared with the public?
Again, as I just repeating, but all documents are available on public, to the public, DTSC, EnviroStore, and those are all the documents we gathered and looked at. So again, existing documentation is available to the public, and more will be made available to the public as we move forward in the process.
There were several board meetings with which we showed everything from environmental maps to soils reporting. I can't tell you which date, but we've been here every month with an update. And I think if you go back to those and still have additional questions about the data we're using today versus the data that will be refined through this process, we could certainly ask that. But there is significant data in previous board reports, including flood maps and soil boring locations, findings of those soil borings, and other components that have informed us to move forward and with confidence that anything we find will have appropriate and available mitigation.
The other piece just, okay. Again, referencing our website, we have a location on our website where we're storing previous reports and information. There is a summary document from the analysis of, I want to say the reports began in like 1993, but I could be wrong, through about 2017, where as the community center was built, as we built the middle school, as we looked at facilities master planning, there were different moments in time where reports were pulled or analyses were pulled, and that information is located there. If you would like to see it, again, prospectively, as soon as we get that information, it will be presented through whatever forum CEQA requires us to present, but also in community forums and also at our board meetings. So,
Thank you. So Cliff Waldeck would like to know, do bond-funded school rebuilds allow private/philanthropic monies to help pay for the project? That's part one of his question. I'll pause.
yes. We need
come on.
$27 million and counting. That would make us feel really happy. So anyone who wants to donate, please.
Okay. And so part two from Cliff is, if private and philanthropic monies can be used, please share how this has been done successfully at similar projects.
Well, I can certainly share our experiences. Often, if I'm being honest, we find most of that philanthropic money or community donations in the athletics arena. Everything from scoreboards to press boxes to additional stadium seating, those kinds of things. They still are required to go through the division of the state architect and be designed to be accessible, structurally safe, and through fire life safety. So someone who gives, let's say, $50,000 to something, and in their head they were getting a brand new stadium, gets a tiny piece of a new stadium because costs are very different on, say, a residential project and one like this. However, we have successfully worked to integrate parent groups and booster groups and philanthropic groups into a project and try and meet their needs. Usually it requires some contribution by the district as well to get the project to completion.
Great. We have another great question and partnering comment that's near and dear to my heart from Cliff. What are the efforts to keep teachers and staff happy during the rebuild process? MVMS has an A+ team, and it would be a shame if the process hurried their retirement. Hear, hear.
Well, I think I can speak on behalf of anyone who dwells in the Mill Valley Middle School site that just having regular heat would be a nice thing. Quality of work conditions when you're working in 52 degrees don't make you really all that ready to be at work. So any kind of improvement that makes us warm, safe, and dry as well, I think is going to be received by our staff. And clearly they're having input in the work that we're doing. I think generally new projects are exciting, although they can be cumbersome during the actual process. So we recognize that there will be grumbling and construction fatigue, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a much different opportunity to work.
Okay, this is, I think, a follow-up comment, that this is the school that every Mill Valley Middle School student will go through. So we have to get the project right, and we also have to leave no stone unturned when it comes to having resources to have the new school be a point of pride. And we need to tap into every avenue of extra funding. I think it goes, to getting from that base to the, big whole enchilada part. So do not underestimate the power of the Mill Valley community as far as that goes. So that was the comment, the follow-up.
$27 million.
Okay. I know, 15 million extra. Okay, so interesting. So this goes back to our earlier comments about just this health, safety, etc. But it says, please respond to the following. It makes no sense for a community as affluent as Mill Valley to commit to its only middle school residing on a former dump. So it's just respond, and again, I think it's reinforcing that ease in people's minds.
Yeah. I think, a couple of, and I invite, this is a conversation we have internally all the time. Again, if someone were to donate us a 14-acre parcel here, that we'd be very, very interested in looking at it and seeing if it meets our needs. For us as a district to go buy that parcel, to build on that parcel, and to do it within the parameters of bond funding is really not an option. We can't afford to do that. However, we have also looked at things like remodeling, taking on existing private properties that people have. Again, we would need to buy them, but then we would also be demolishing those properties because we have an obligation in school construction to meet what's referred to as the Field Act. So we can't take children into buildings that haven't really had the coverage of the health, life, or what is it, life safety, fire life safety, that are required for a school building. And that's why the cost per square foot is so much more significant when we're looking at school buildings. But that is, if there were other parcels within Mill Valley and we could buy them, we would certainly consider other options. But in our existing footprint, we've already gone over our own district property and made the decision that this is the best campus to build the flagship, experience for our children for many reasons. And part of it being the proximity of the center of our community, adjacency to a community center, and adjacency also to a high school where many of them will be part of that larger community as well. So yeah, not ideal. And I don't know if we were in the inception phases of trying to build a middle school if we would here, but it is district property, and we don't have a whole lot of other options unless anyone wants to donate.
And again, there were board meetings where we focused solely on the options. We evaluated all of the district-owned properties for size, location, environmental impacts to the extent that we could know them. And realize that, again, because of size, because of cost, because of impact to the rest of the students in the district, potentially, that this became the board's choice as our first choice.
So Anonymous wants to know, if kids start in the temporary building starting fall 2025, when is the target date for kids moving back into the new building?
So right now we're looking at end of construction for the new school in 2027. So it would be the fall of 2027 for move-in into the new building.
Okay, thank you. Who is the Anonymous also wants to know, Who is the lead agency for CEQA? Is there risk of delay if the project faces litigation? Is there an expedited process to resolve for a public school project?
So the lead agency is DTSC, the Department of Substances Control.
DTSC is on. No, go.
But essentially so CEQA and the environmental process, there's no expedited process. We just have to go step by step and address, it is regulated how the process is. So if there are any hiccups, if there are any concerns, we're gonna have to address them. If it takes a little longer, we're gonna have to address them. We just have to go through the process step by step.
If there were litigation, it would. There's the question about additional part of that question was about litigation. And I think in litigation, we respond to whatever the concerns are, and that also slows down the process. So I think, again, what we're trying to do is be as proactive as possible and, get our reports done early, get them ahead of our construction schedule so that we really can pivot if we need to. Again, we don't have a super solid plan B at the moment because it's about being landlocked in Mill Valley and property availability.
Great, thank you. Our next question refers to the schematic of the temporary buildings. So where will they be? We saw a drawing earlier in the presentation. Maybe we can refer to that as well. But the temporary buildings, where will they be? Will any of the existing campus be used? You referenced that earlier as well. And can you post these somewhere if they're not?
So they're all posted on the district's website. We've done several workshops on specifically the interim housing, but they will basically be on the parking lot and the hard court playground on the other side of the creek, adjacent to where, for those of you very familiar with the campus, the PE portables are on that side of the creek. And then we will be using the existing multipurpose building, the existing PE portables, as well as those portable buildings all around the multipurpose that exists today as to meet the requirements of the interim housing for a one-for-one replacement, basically, of what's in this building.
And just to piggyback off of that, this next question, also from Anonymous, is similarly referring to the temporary classes. Will they be set up for rain? And will they have overhangs or anything to protect the kids moving from class to class? And are they heated? Is there any heating in those?
They are heated, maybe better than 52 degrees even. So they are going to be leased, and they are leased as typically ready and brand new when they come out to the facility. Typically, they have a 5-foot overhang adjacent to the walkway, and so you can tuck under that. We did show a video, virtual reality video a few meetings ago of the temporary campus to demonstrate how we were trying to create those grade level neighborhoods, some covered shade structures, areas for lunch, collaboration space, outdoor collaboration spaces between buildings in order to create the best possible environment we could for those 2 years. So again, I would just urge you to look for that interim housing board meeting, and you'll see a video inside of that gives, I think, a pretty accurate description of what the potential is for that interim campus.
Thank you. Again, Anonymous, is there a MVSD webpage that posts all documents that have been mentioned, environmental, geological, historical, etc.? If not, could one be made?
We have a lot of information on our Measure G page. We're constantly updating, and that's one of the things we're working on right now is to create a dashboard coming out within the next, hopefully 30 to 16 days to be able to have more up-to-date information. And so that's really one of the things we're working on to make sure that we have additional information provided to the public. And you should be seeing that updated on our webpage here within the next month or two. Yeah.
So all of our board meetings are posted, the videos and the community meetings we're having are also posted at the Measure G. So if you go to mvschools.org and click on the Measure G link, you should be able to find any number of resources.
Thank you. Again, from Anonymous, there is this question. Was any other location considered as temporary school for kids during construction? For example, the seminary. No idea if a location like that is still available.
I'll take it. Yes, other locations have been considered. Again, for most of our opportunities to engage and bring students into privately constructed facilities or empty office commercial buildings, we would have to, first of all, secure access and have an agreement. But secondly, create buildings that were, again, Field Act compliant. So there would be an investment on our part, potentially delaying the work and delaying our ability to, house kids temporarily. I mean, we've looked at any number of options, like including leaving the kids in this facility and building somewhere else on adjacent properties. It's just that, right now for the footprint we have and the footprint we need, we believe the interim housing on this campus is the most cost-effective and safest way for us to provide access for children to learn in a 6th through 8th grade configuration, which we as a community or a board governance team believe is the correct way to lead our children through their middle years.
Excellent. Where will athletics and theater programs take place during construction?
So as part of our temporary housing plan, the gym will stay intact. So currently right now, the gym would not be part of at least the initial phase of construction. And so we're currently planning on replacing this main building. And so the gym would stay the same, and as well as the theater and the support systems that are in the gym as well.
And it looks like that's the end of the queue of questions. We went through them fast and furious. There were a lot of great ones today. I think that is wonderful representation of a lot of the concerns and comments in our community. And if there are any additional thoughts.
No, I just want to, first close and thank everyone for coming, but please, it is absolutely imperative for us that we have the opportunity to answer questions, because we need you to feel that your kids are safe in our district, no matter what we do, right? And so if there are concerns, please, know we're doing our best to answer things. We may not have the answers right now, but we're getting them. But if there are things that you think we're overlooking or questions that you've asked that you feel we've given you a pedantic or bureaucratic response to, please, keep asking. Email me, email Julio. We are here to answer questions, and as you know, with any construction project, things will change, right? All of our best laid plans will come up with glitches and hitches, and so we want to make sure we have that open discourse with people from the get-go, so that as we learn things, we can know what's the best way to communicate with and engage families, because it's important that you're happy with. I'm always less concerned about the kids. The kids are happy when they're with other kids and there are adults who care about them. And so, and they will learn, many, they're resilient and they're curious. So it's more parents feeling safe with their children with us. And so if nothing else, that's my job. So please, don't hesitate to reach out.
And sorry. Sure, yeah.
Just as a follow-up on timing, if the gym and theater are going, when will those construction projects take place, and when do you think, what is the anticipated end date for those projects?
So currently right now, we believe that the funding was only to replace this main building. And so there's some environmental costs that we have to see how much of that, but ultimately, as far as we know today, it's just going to be this main building. And so the gym and those auxiliary buildings are not included currently.
And the last, almost last question is just a shout out to that high demand video of the temporary facilities and those, spaces. Someone's asking, where does that live? Because I remember it was cool.
We can put it in the family newsletter as a link.
Nice, get ready. Okay.
And it's also.
So, yeah.
On the Mill Valley School District website, there is a Measure G page where all videos for these Measure G community forums are displayed for the public, and the video is embedded in one of those videos. My apologies, I don't remember specifically which date it was, but it is easily accessible there.
Great microphone voice, Sid. Shout out. Last one.
Thank you all. Dr. Kaufman, you mentioned a few times $27 million as being a difference-making number. In all seriousness, we don't know what the world of possibility is out there. Could you comment on what that 27 would do? And can we make it available? Actually, I guess a preliminary question, is it a binary 27 or nothing? Like, if it was opened up to the community and $15 million was raised by a certain deadline, could you comment on what that might be able to do for the project and how that could be made visible to the community?
Sure. Sid, will you take us, and I can hand it to Sandrine too, but I'm so excited to be able to talk about my the state funding. So one more forward. So there. So we're estimating a shortfall of about $20 million, right? Now, I've remodeled my house multiple times, and my first remodel and the first loan I took ended up being a second loan, ended up being a third loan. I had a great house by the end of it, but I think that is what we're anticipating, not only just in terms of the hard cost, but the soft cost, but also, questions about what could we do for the gymnasium? Like this is to make ends meet without state funding, which state funding is the normal practice. It's just we're a little worried about how the state bond measure is going to go and, the timing of receiving that funding. So we're fairly certain if we ask the state for funding, we will get that funding, but it could be years from now. And so, what do we do in the short term for bridge funding? Those are all things that, from a timeline perspective, anytime we get money, we'll take the money, right? But as the board goes and looks at its fiduciary responsibility about how much risk do we want to take, or how much exposure do we want to take to build projects, that's why we're considering it. Again, to me, the 20 million is there, but realistically, there are some dollars attached to gymnasium or a theater room or some other things that, hey, we'd take 30 million, we'd take 35 million, but I mean, those things would be really to get the project completed in a way that we think is truly the flagship for the community. It's just, it's everything in schools is expensive. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, 30 million, 50 million, 100 million. I think the school district will be, happy to get any fundraising or donations, but essentially the 20 million is the minimum we need right now to complete what the master plan is talking about, what the voters voted, right? And I say if we get the 20 million today, it would essentially eliminate that risk level, right? To say, okay, is the bond measure going to pass in November? And then how many years are we going to wait for it? Because we're going to advance the money, or the district is going to advance the money and figure out how to finance that cost until the check from the state arrives. So I'd say, that 20 million is really like the base of we're addressing. Okay, 27, but essentially it allows us to do what Measure G says. And yeah, but we have to plan for how we're financing that 20 million down the road.
And that's a wrap. And it's 6 o'clock on the dot. Thank you to everyone again for coming and all the great comments, questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, everyone. And
And
we
if
will be
anybody
putting
wants
out our February community meeting in the next week or so.
Right,
With a cool link to the video.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.